Let's take a look at understanding conflict. Conflict exists whenever two or more people come together with divergent views or needs. Conflict is rooted in disagreement over issues or needs, the way to address issues or to achieve needs, and the reconciliation of differences in personal aspirations behind the issues of needs. People experience internal tension when they perceive their personal values and goals being compromised, or when they're asked to behave in contradictory ways to their own betterment. Conflict causes stress, anxiety, and anger. Conflict can destroy interpersonal communication, inhibit group cohesion, and rupture interpersonal relations. The positive effects of conflict are opportunities for problem solving, innovation, change, and organizational cohesion. The manner in which conflicts are resolved is the key to promoting positive effects that can result from conflict situations. Conflict can be resolved in many ways, ranging from formal written contracts to tacit agreements. Causes of conflict include misunderstandings over roles, responsibilities, policies, values, goals, resources, and authority. Conflict may be visible or hidden, but the successful resolution of conflict is attributed to the knowledge, skills, and management style used by the leader. Conflict is a valuable source of organizational renewal. When legitimate conflict is encouraged by leaders, it provides a healthy environment for constructive development. Conflict management methods are almost as numerous as sources of conflict itself. Conflict management is a means of promoting collaboration among conflicting parties, thereby preventing the conflict from becoming irreversible or affecting others. One model for managing conflict presented begins with diagnosing the way in which each individual has conceptualized the issue of conflict. In this model, two important goals exist, or the conflict manager, to instill conflicting parties a spirit of cooperativeness and to discover the root problems of the conflict. The following steps can help conflict managers to achieve these ends. Promote an atmosphere of empathy and focus on achieving an outcome that is fair and mutually acceptable. Require open and honest communication among all parties in the conflict management conference, including the communication of the conflict manager. Discover ways in which parties have similar and dissimilar goals. Emphasize the positive aspects of mutually agreed upon goals and look to bridge or reconcile dissimilar goals. Develop a plan to achieve improved working relationships by identifying ways to achieve mutual goals. Develop a time frame for goal achievement and specify exactly how to progress as to be evaluated in achieving these agreed upon goals. Managing conflict can also be accomplished by using authority. Although decisions made by the authority can end up in opening conflict quickly, they cannot resolve initial differences, which may lead to more widespread conflict. The use of authority should be applied judiciously in light of potential negative ramifications, and with the understanding that the application of authority is not as important as how the authority is applied. The use of authority to settle conflict may be necessary when both parties are deeply committed to their beliefs or goals and when job performance is being sacrificed. Avoidance behavior is the most natural way to deal with conflict. Conflict has generic stages, and different management techniques are required at different stages. The smoke state is when conflict events begin to surface and signal tension or dissatisfaction. Often, tension results from misunderstanding and can be remedied through the dissemination of accurate information. The discussion stage follows and results from ignoring the situation. Discussion makes the sources of the conflict widespread and formally recognized, with individuals taking sides and polarizing the workplace. The fire stage develops when conflict erupts into an open and as a result of verbal accusations or unprofessional behavior, and administrative action is required immediately through the process of conflict resolution before total disruption occurs. During this stage, people take sides, emotions run deep, and conflict requires all involved parties to spend time and energy on the issue. The ashes, or final stage, is a period of reassessment and natural healing. Here, the leader must determine the root cause of conflict and take measures to negate its reoccurrence. Lessons learned from the conflict should be used to bring about immediate, positive changes. Process construct of conflict is a sequence of events that explains the interactions of two or more parties engaged in an interaction. Viewed as a series of episodic events, the behavior of one party triggers the behavior of another, with the degree of reaction being dependent on the significance of the impact. Conflict is viewed as a win-lose situation and escalates over time with responses depending on the personalities involved. Mutually satisfactory outcomes must be reached, or latent conflict areas will trigger later conflict. Structural construct conflict maintains that the conflict results from conditions that influence behavior. Structural causes may be organizational policies, cultural or group norms, or personality traits and expectations of others' behavior. Team conflict has many causes. Teams are made up of individuals with their own idiosyncrasies, human frailties, and personal values. Conflict in empowered teams has two root causes: the goals of the team and the collected negative stamps of team members. Conflict can lead to passive-aggressive behavior such as procrastination, delay, and avoidance. Resolving conflict by identifying common values promotes commitment through people's personal belief systems. Values are universally accepted behaviors, not codes of conduct or doctrine. Team conflict can also result when leaders and subordinates have incourageous role expectations for themselves or others. Role expectations must clearly be defined and agreement must be reached before goals can be attained. Resolving problems between two or more parties requires objectivity and open and honest discussion. Those resolving conflict must focus on the problem and not the personalities of those involved. When conflict cannot be resolved to the full satisfaction of the parties in conflict, achieving compromise through a third party is imperative. Gaining consensus is a way to prevent conflict. Consensus does not mean that all people have to approve to the outcome of 100%, but it does mean that each group member accepts and can abide by the outcome. Reaching consensus is not always easily achieved. Original positions or expectations often require modification. There are several salient characteristics for leaders who attempt to resolve conflict quickly and strive for win-win outcomes. Negotiating strategies abound, with each strategy requiring involved parties to present their demands on conflict issues and to conclude with mutually agreed upon outcomes to the satisfaction of all involved parties. Negotiating is a process that takes the divergent needs and expectations of people and, through mediation, facilitates an acceptable solution more quickly and harmoniously than does interpersonal conflict resolution models. A variation of the negotiations model begins when both parties identify their interests individually by writing a position statement. The idea is to determine the real motives behind their interests. Both parties provide a joint oral summary of the interest statement. Emphasis is placed on similar interests that are expressed. Sometimes an agreement is reached at this stage if an agreed-upon solution can be identified. The mediator develops a problem statement which is agreed upon by both parties and asks both parties to brainstorm possible solutions to the problem. Ideas for solutions can be merged when points of agreement exist. If mutual interests are met at this stage, the problem is then solved and the negotiation process ends. If not, the process continues. The mediator asks both parties to evaluate statements to decide on a proposed solution. The optimal solution may not exist, but the solution providing the greatest satisfaction to both parties is the goal of negotiation. A mediator takes the solution identified by both parties and encourages them to develop an action plan with specific activities for each party to initiate and implement toward the agreed-upon solution. The mediator then conducts periodic reviews of progress towards the solution through meetings where progress is discussed and any new issues are resolved. Good communication and listening skills minimize the potential for conflict situations to arise. Effective listening calls for intellectual and emotional involvement. When the receiver has empathy with the sender, effective listening takes place.